How's it going, my bakers? Hope you're having a great day so far. Welcome back to another video. Today I'll show you how to make super unique Finnish pastries. So let's get in the kitchen and get started. Karelian pies are traditional Finnish pastries made with a rye flour based dough, which is rolled thin and filled with various fillings. The version that we're going to make today is filled with an unsweetened rice pudding filling, which after baking, as you can see in the middle example, is sometimes topped with so-called egg butter, which, as the name implies, is made from eggs and butter. It's pretty rich stuff. That makes it very heavy, very hearty, but super delicious. But the topping is optional. These things are good as they are. Let's get to it. Let me show you how to make these unique little pastries. We'll need some whole grain rye flour, also known as dark rye flour. We'll need some spelt flour or whole wheat flour, some butter, water and salt. For the filling, we'll need some short grain pudding rice, some full fat milk, water, butter and salt. And you could of course make it sweet if you want to, like a regular rice pudding, you know. And for the optional topping, we'll need some boiled eggs and some butter. As for the equipment, we'll need a tray lined with non-stick paper, a bowl, scales, a dough scraper, a pan for cooking the rice pudding, and a rolling pin for rolling out the pastry. Right, let's start by making the rice pudding. First, pour the water in the pan and place the pan on high heat to bring the water up to a boil. Once the water starts boiling, add the rice. Cook it for around 5 minutes until almost all the water has been absorbed. After the first 5 minutes of cooking, add the salt and the butter, give them a quick mix, and then finally add the milk. Let the milk come up to a boil, then turn it down to a simmer and leave it to cook for around 30 minutes until the rice is completely soft. Now the reason why we're using water in this recipe, and the reason why we start the cooking process with the water, is that it's just quicker and safer. When you try to boil straight up milk, sometimes it gets stuck to the bottom of the pan, so you have to use a lower heat and wait for a longer time. Okay, whilst the rice is simmering away, let's move on to making the dough, or the pastry. First, dissolve the salt in the water, then add the melted butter and the spelt flour, mix them in until smooth, and finally add the rye flour, grab your dough scraper and mix to a dough. Whenever I'm using two different flours, I like to mix in one of them first. It ensures that all the ingredients will be dispersed evenly throughout the dough. Usually I would start with the flour which there is less of. That's why I first mix in the spelt flour. If there were equal amounts, it wouldn't matter. This dough is pretty tough, so you might want to finish the mix with your hand. Okay, right after mixing, we can weigh it and then divide it into 8 equal pieces, because we're making 8 little pies. After dividing, you want to shape the little dough pieces into little dough balls. Take a piece of dough, flatten it, and fold the edge over the middle whilst going around in a circle to reach point where you started. Then flip it smooth side up and tighten it against table. There's not much gluten here, so don't expect the dough balls to be very round, and they don't need to be anyway. Arrange them on a plate or on a tray and cover them up. And by now, the rice pudding should be almost done. You don't want it too wet and you don't want it too stiff either. Cook it until most of the liquid has been absorbed. You should be able to draw a line in the pudding with a spatula without it closing right away. Now if you want to make a sweet version, skip the salt or just add a little pinch of it and add around 50 grams or 1.75 ounces of sugar. And to give it some flavor, you can add a couple of grams of cinnamon. And to make it even more interesting, you could add some raisins or some other dried fruits. I mean, it's rice pudding, you can throw many things in there, it'll still be good. It is all up to your taste. And this is exactly how it should look. Now transfer it to a bowl, leave it to cool down. You could spread it out on a tray if you want to cool it down sooner. I wasn't planning on making these on the same day, so I'm placing them both in the fridge overnight. But you can start using the filling as soon as it's cool enough to handle. But before you start shaping, start preheating the oven to 230 degrees Celsius or 445 Fahrenheit fan on, or 250 Celsius or 480 Fahrenheit fan off. Right, it is the next day, got my dough balls and my filling out the fridge. Let's move on to shaping these things. If you're gonna make them on the same day, you don't need to cool this dough down, but it can make it easier to handle. Usually when I make unleavened breads, I do like to chill the dough down, but this dough is pretty stiff as it is. And if it does start sticking, we can just use a little bit more flour for dusting. Alright, so grab your dough ball, roll it in some flour, squish it flat with your hand first, and then continue by rolling with the rolling pin. And keep adding more flour if need be. You want to give it an oblong shape, and it should be nice and thin. And I do mean thin, like a millimeter or two, no more. After rolling out, make sure to dust off any excess flour. You can use a little pastry brush for that. Because my filling was sitting in the fridge overnight, it became quite tough. If you're making yours on the same day, it'll be much easier to spread out. Place 1/8 of the filling on each piece of dough. Spread it out as evenly as possible and be sure to leave a little edge. Another great filling for this, I imagine, will be the one I used for vatrushka, which is made of curd cheese, sugar and eggs. It's quite a common filling for sweet pastries for my part of the world. The good thing about it is that it requires pretty much no preparation, except mixing the ingredients together. Okay, once the filling has been spread out, we can move on to crimping the edge. We'll be using the index finger and the thumb on each hand at the same time. First fold the dough up, then pinch it together in the middle, and then work your way out to each end. It is really very simple. We are just giving it a little pinch and that is all. Each time we pinch the dough together, we want to pinch the filling as well, so that the filling and the dough pretty much become one as they bake. And there you go. You don't have to make them one by one. You can roll out all the dough balls, then top them all, and then pinch them all together. After shaping, arrange the pies on a non-stick paper lined baking tray and then bang them in the oven for around 15 minutes. Now, you may have noticed that I couldn't fit all of them on one tray, so I had to bake the other two separately. Once they have a nice bit of color on them, they're ready. To make them nice and shiny, you can brush them with some oil or with some butter as soon as they come out the oven. But that is optional, there's enough fat in this recipe as is. Okay, after they're done, leave them on a rack to cool down. And whilst they're cooling down, we can move on to making the egg butter. The pies and the egg butter are new things to me. I had never heard of either of them. Now the recipe that I adapted suggested that the eggs should be cut with a knife. But thinking about it now, I could have just grated them. The basic recipe only consists of eggs, softened butter, salt and pepper, which makes for a very hearty, very heavy topping. To liven it up a little bit, you could mix in some herbs like dill or chives or even parsley, and you could add a little spoonful of mustard to cut through the richness of this mix. But I'll leave those decisions up to you. And like I already said, the pies are just fine without the topping. You could skip the egg butter, eat them plain, or even top them with some jam. I must say this is one of the unique and most strange bakes I've ever done. I guess it's because I wasn't familiar with it. Someone mentioned it in the comment section of one of my videos, and I am very happy to have been introduced to it. It is unique, it is tasty, just a couple of these will fill you up, and it's super easy to make so you can't go wrong. So you should give it a go and see if you're into it too. So what do you think of these unique little bakes? Have you seen them before? Have you tried them? What's your favorite filling? Let me know down in the comments. If you want to see more videos like this one, click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.